Olá, tudo bem? Bem-vindo ao meu programa. Hoje eu estou um pouco cansado, pois eu passei a noite inteira assistindo vídeos no YouTube dos Estados Unidos, das manifestações que estão acontecendo em repúdio contra o assassinato covarde do George Floyd, um homem completamente inocente, afro-americano, que foi assassinado pelos 4 policiais corruptos, nojentos e racistas. É claro que esse é um problema que acontece diariamente no Brasil também. Enquanto as manifestações crescem nos Estados Unidos, tem mais e mais reclamações das pessoas que estão no chão, no meio do todo, do que eles estão sendo infiltrados pelos grupos organizados, mercenários brancos, supremacistas brancos. Tem vídeos que já saíram dos primeiros danos às propriedades na cidade de Minneapolis sendo feito pelos policiais brancos disfarçados, P2. Mesma coisa que aconteceu, que todo mundo sabe que aconteceu em 2013. Algumas semanas atrás, houve uma tentativa fracassada de golpe em Venezuela e foram presos vários funcionários de uma empresa de mercenários chamada Silver Corp, da Flórida. A jornalista Nathalia Urban, que é um dos mais novos integrantes da nossa equipe de 247, fez um excelente jornalismo investigativo e descobriu que esse pessoal do Silver Corp estava no Brasil durante a época eleitoral do Bolsonaro, em 2018. O que eles estavam fazendo aqui? E nessa entrevista, que eu vou mostrar para vocês agora, legendado, The Grayzone, que é um dos maiores grupos jornalísticos anti-imperialistas do idioma inglês, liderado pelo Max Blumenthal e Ben Norton, entrevista a Nathalia sobre essa questão do Silver Corp. Será que Silver Corp estava aqui para fazer o mesmo tipo de trabalho do P2 que os supremacistas brancos estão fazendo em algumas cidades nos Estados Unidos agora? Agora eu falo sobre os agentes provocadores agindo nos Estados Unidos. Não de forma qualquer de delegitimizar o uso de violência dos manifestantes Black Lives Matter. O problema de racismo estrutural é sério. Aquela delegacia mereceu de ser tocado fogo. Agora, como a gente sabe do 2013, quando começam grandes manifestações espontâneas, o risco de ser cooptado pelo direito é alto. O Trump está tentando fazer isso, os minions dele, os alinhados do Bolsonaro, do grupo do Steve Bannon, estão tentando. Eu acho que eles não conseguem, mas é importante saber o risco e fica consciente dos riscos desse tipo de coisa acontecer no Brasil. Eu espero que todos e todas de vocês tenham uma boa domingo e que vocês gostem dessa entrevista que vou mostrar agora.
This is Moderate Rebels. I'm Ben Norton. Still, we're all in quarantine. Max Blumenthal, my co-host, is in Washington, D.C., and today we're joined by the Brazilian journalist Nathalia Urban, who is based in Scotland and is from Brazil and reports a lot for a lot of great independent websites, including Brazil Wire, friends of the show, the best English language reporting on Brazil. That's Brasil, like the Portuguese and Spanish spelling, BrasilWire.com. And Nathalia also contributes to several other websites inside Brazil. And we have her on today to talk about the chaos that's going on inside Brazil. You know, the U.S., we've talked about in the past few episodes, has been the epicenter of the international COVID-19 pandemic. But quickly, Brazil is becoming the new epicenter. It has one of the worst coronavirus outbreaks on earth, and the far-right government, the fascistic government of Jair Bolsonaro, has basically done very little to nothing to deal with this massive pandemic, which is now probably the worst in Latin America, although it's competing with Ecuador, with the U.S. puppet regime there of Lenin Moreno, for having the honor, the great honor of having one of the highest death rates of COVID-19 on the planet. So we're going to talk about what the situation has been, of course, with coronavirus, but actually the larger political situation, because this chaos that Brazilians are living through right now is a political chaos, the result of the Bolsonaro government. We've talked in past episodes here at Moderate Rebels about how the Bolsonaro government came to power through a U.S. government-backed soft coup against the Workers' Party, the democratically elected government of Dilma Rousseff, and also the former president Lula da Silva. So there's a lot of topics we're going to talk about today.
Donald Trump is, sorry, Jair Bolsonaro has been compared in this country to Donald Trump. They say he's, the South American Donald Trump. Steve Bannon, who was Donald Trump's campaign manager and for a while his chief of staff, has this fascist international organization. And I think Eduardo Bolsonaro is the Latin American director. Eduardo Bolsonaro is the son of Jair Bolsonaro. He's basically like juiced up, version of Netanyahu's nerd son, Yair. And they clear space for their dad to be more extreme and so on. But, Trump is so well associated with Bolsonaro, and he's done a lot to legitimize him. You have other forces in Washington that have legitimized Bolsonaro on the bipartisan side. The Council of the Americas, for example, this bipartisan think tank. It's actually run by Democrats, but they support the right in Latin America on behalf of big finance. But now you have this sort of cataclysmic event where the Trump administration cuts off travel from Brazil and basically declares that Bolsonaro has failed, that he's failed his country. The legitimacy that Bolsonaro had on the right is stripping away here. And I wonder what you think the effect of this will be domestically, and if you have any, conspiracy theories to offer on,
Actually,
what contributed to it.
It's not a conspiracy. It's actually
Or
a
conspiracy facts. We deal in
Yes, a
conspiracy facts.
conspiracy fact.
Strictly
Is
conspiracy
that
facts.
one of the person that is behind Bolsonaro's digital militia, and who's also used to work for the United States Embassy in Brazil, Felipe G. Martins. When the White House officially announced the travel ban, he created a whole story to justify why they were doing that. But it was not because of Bolsonaro was failing to control the pandemic. No, it was just because Brazil is a very huge country and it's highly populated. So it was a measure of the quantity of people of Brazil that travel a lot to the United States. So they were trying to protect not just the Brazilians, but also the United States because of the amount of travelers among both countries. The problem was not the government. It's just a mathematic question. So it was very funny, especially because Felipe G. Martins, he's the person that was the responsible for introducing Steve Bannon to Bolsonaro. He's the big link behind all the digital militia that unfortunately now it's not the biggest concern for us anymore, because the digital militia in Brazil became a real militia. The amount of far-right groups that are being radicalized in Brazil now, it's beyond any study that there is in Brazil in the last 30 years or so, since the redemocratization of the country. So when we see a country that now has a president that said we need to arm people to protect, because the people who are armed, they can defend themselves against fascist governors, like, for example, the São Paulo governor and the Rio de Janeiro governor, who are people, they are not nice, they are terrible politicians, they are also neoliberal fascist monsters, but they were inducing the people to social isolation. And Bolsonaro considered their measure a fascist one, because they are taking the freedom of the people to come and go. And this is against our constitution. So Bolsonaro said, that's why I want to give people guns, because they can defend themselves against those governors who are taking their freedom away. So basically, we have a president that is stimulating its own people to declare a civil war.
Yeah, and Natalia, I'm glad you brought this up, because I was going to ask you about the growth of these fascist militias. Of course, we don't have time to get into the entire history, but we need to stress the context that after World War II, and even during the Holocaust and before World War II, there were a lot of Nazi collaborators and fascists who came to Brazil. Brazil had a series of military dictatorships, including pro-fascist, pro-Nazi military dictatorships. So there's a long historical subtext, but we've seen under Bolsonaro the massive increase, the huge surge in these fascist militias. And I'm looking at a tweet here from Oliver Stunkel, who is a prominent kind of neoliberal elite voice in Brazil, who writes a column for El País, the major Spanish newspaper, and also works a lot with ASCOA, the Americas Society and Council of the Americas, which is, Max mentioned them. They're this U.S. government-linked kind of think tank that's really a vehicle for Washington's interest in Latin America, and also just corporate interests in Latin America. And anyway, Oliver Stunkel, this professor, he's been tweeting, basically defending Bolsonaro's call for militarizing the population and creating these militias. And how is he doing it? He's pointing out that Hugo Chavez and the Chavista government in Venezuela created a popular militia. Of course, what is not being acknowledged is that the popular militia in Venezuela, which is a volunteer militia which now has 3 million members, is under the jurisdiction of the government. These are not paramilitaries that are just gangs of people who kind of control different neighborhoods like drug lords. I mean, this is an institution that's part of the state, and there are volunteer members who are part of the militia who want to defend their country from a foreign invasion, which would be by the US. So, of course, the context in Venezuela is totally different, but Bolsonaro is once again pointing toward Venezuela to justify these fascistic policies.
I saw a few days ago a Bolsonaro supporter, not sure if he was a real person or just a robot, showing a picture of the Kentucky State House with the militia in front of the Kentucky State House, holding guns and the American flag, and saying that they were tired of the lockdown, that they want to work. They were like threatening the state governor there. And when I saw that, and when the comment of the person who tweeted that picture was, "We need this here." And the most incredible thing in Brazil now, I don't know if you ever saw the expression, "We need to Ukrainize Brazil." Brazil, yes,
Who said that?
Brazil. Sarah Winter. I don't really know her real last name, but let me just finish the thought of the Ukrainize Brazil. So there is now many anthropologists. She did a research which shows that there are 334 neo-Nazi groups active in Brazil right now. Among those groups, there are KKK groups, German neo-Nazi factions, regular sectarian groups, and they have a battalion Azov point in Brazil, affiliated group in Brazil as well.
For listeners who don't know, the Azov Battalion is a neo-Nazi, explicitly white supremacist militia in Ukraine. It played a key role in the 2014 coup against the Russian-oriented elected government, and it's also been backed by the Ukrainian state. It was merged into the Ukrainian National Guard and is backed by the U.S. government. So Natalia, you're saying that among the over 300 different neo-Nazi militias in Brazil, there is officially a Ukrainian neo-Nazi faction.
No, we have many Ukraine neo-Nazi factions in Brazil right now, which it's really bizarre. And that girl,
we call them moderate rebels.
Yeah. Also, you got to say, man, Latin American racism is so crazy because
It's
this
really
is a country
crazy, right?
where to white supremacists in the US, none of these people would be considered white, or very few of them would be considered white. But in Brazil, they all like, yeah, we're white and we hate black and brown people.
When the group, what they are doing now, when the lockdown talk started to come up in Brazil, Sarah Winter, who she used to be the Femen, the feminist Ukrainian group representative in Brazil. But she said that after she converted to as a Christian and she had contact with the true conservadorism, she's now a newborn person. But she did had some training in Ukraine. And now she has a camp in Brazilian, which she is giving away the training that she received in Ukraine from I don't know what group she had the training there, because I didn't even knew that Femen had a military training originally in Ukraine. She just said I had a training in Ukraine, and she started to use a hashtag on Twitter that was followed by many elected members of the Congress. That is Ucraniza Brasil, Ukrainize Brazil. Like they are asking for Brazil to get inspiration from the nationalist groups from Ukraine and do the same that they did there in Brazil.
So, the digital militia we've talked about before in a previous episode when we interviewed our friend Alina Piva, who explained to us one of the reasons why Bolsonaro was able to sort of spread his message of extremism, and it was really this fake news brigade that conveyed various memes and narratives through WhatsApp, including that the Workers' Party was going to indoctrinate children into sucking penis-shaped pacifiers, that kind of just stuff that you would find ridiculous.
To stress the importance of this, this was Bolsonaro's first ever trip to the U.S. as the president of Brazil, and he immediately visited CIA headquarters. But they were giving away the game because it wasn't just Bolsonaro. It was also Sergio Moro who went with him to CIA headquarters. And it's one thing, it's bad enough. It's an awful look for the head of a foreign, ostensibly sovereign country to visit CIA headquarters. But why is his super justice minister visiting with him? And of course, the answer is what many Brazilian leftists had been speculating for many years, that it's very clear that Moro had been working with the CIA and with other U.S. intelligence agencies and the FBI, we now know,
to arrest Lula. Because during their meetings, the documents the Agência Pública had access were showing that the FBI said they were annoyed by Lula's reluctance and denial of making groups and political parties like Hezbollah and Hamas be considered terrorist group in Brazil as well, like they do in all the countries that they have some power. And Lula said, no, we won't do what you are asking. So they seemed very annoyed by this in the documents. And it was mentioned that by Moro, and one of the first things that Brazil did, the country, when Bolsonaro came to office, was to consider those groups that United States consider as terrorist group a terrorist as well.
We have a piece up at the Grayzone now by Daniel Jejic on the registration by the German government 2 weeks ago, I guess, of Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. This is a political party, one of the main political parties in Lebanon that's in parliament and in a coalition government. So it would be, it's basically about advancing U.S. and Israeli foreign policy from Latin America. Has almost nothing to do with any reality in Brazil. Colombia under
But
yeah.
the person who brought the idea of like Hezbollah and Hamas doing anything in Latin America was Roger Noriega, who worked with Bush administration.
Right,
And
Roger Noriega.
He
Yeah,
was also the biggest cheerleader of the coup that removed Dilma from power.
this is in the they call it the triangle, or like this area where there are several borders, and Roger Noriega is one of the biggest fanatics in Washington. He was sitting behind me at a Council of the Americas event, and after I asked a critical question of the director of USAID about why they were funding violent elements in Nicaragua, he started taking all these pictures of the back of my head, showing that I have male pattern baldness, or I don't know what. Noriega's bald, and then he just screamed at me after the event. I'm like, who is this crazy guy screaming at me? And I realized it was Roger Noriega, someone who's been behind, every coup, involved in every coup plot since the Bush administration, from 2002 in Venezuela. He even afterwards tried to stir up a coup or some kind of activity in Cuba in 2014. So it makes perfect sense. It's about delegitimizing the left governments and saying that they're harboring terrorists in their midst. After Netanyahu had a call with Ivan Duque last week, Colombia has also declared Hezbollah a terrorist organization. So yeah, it all makes perfect sense. It's all kind of come together. I wanted to ask about a related incident that has to do with U.S. planning. It's pretty clear to me. I mean, it makes perfect sense that this Silver Corps mercenary organization that recently organized the Bay of Piglets in Venezuela, or the Bay of Guinea Pigs, whatever you want to call it. This absurdly bungled invasion of Venezuela with or Venezuelan defectors, turncoats, who are poorly armed. That they couldn't have gotten all those weapons and training camps into Colombia without at least the express permission, and if not just the knowledge of the Colombian government. But these guys were in Brazil in 2018 as Operation Gideon, their plan to invade Venezuela, was underway. What was their connection with Bolsonaro? What was going on there?
Well, they were in Brazil. I was the one that actually found out they were in Brazil. They were in Brazil in the week that the elections were about to happen there, the presidential elections.
Yeah, I mean, what could have been the reason?
My take on this is Bolsonaro. He was very, very strong worded through the end of his campaign. That he did not make a campaign because of the stabbing, and he was at the hospital, etc. But he gave an interview saying, I will not accept a result that is not me winning, or at least me being the most voted candidate. So when the reporter asked, so are you saying you won't believe the result of the election? Because this is a very thing to say in a country that spent 30 years or so in a dictatorship. And he said, no, I know that people in the streets want me. So any result that is unfavorable to me, it will have a response. So my take on this is Bolsonaro, through his contacts in the United States, he had the mercenaries, the American mercenaries in Brazil, waiting in case of the results were like he was not like his performance in the elections were not by his like, and they would start the same way they wanted to start the fomented a coup in Venezuela, whatever, they would do the same in Brazil, same way they did in Bolivia. But because Bolsonaro performed tremendously well in the first turn of the elections, they left the country just around a few days before the second round of votes, because we all knew after the first round of votes that Haddad would not be able to surpass Bolsonaro. So they knew that as well, but they were there.
Ben, I don't know if you want to take us out here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are listening to Moderate Rebels. We were speaking with Nathalia Urban, who is a great Brazilian journalist. You can see her work on Twitter. Actually, do you want to just tell our listeners and viewers, Nathalia, where people can find your work?
You can find my work in English in Brasil Wire, of course. Hopefully soon in more other outlets as well. I also write here in Scotland and podcast for Ungagged Scotland. In Brazil, I have articles published in Brasil 247. I'm now going to have my own space there, and I'm live, how can I say, a video living with them every Friday with them and
live
Brian
streaming every
Meir
Friday.
from Brasil Wire.
Excellent. And you can follow Nathalia on Twitter, which I would recommend, at Urban Nathalia, her name, so Urban Nathalia. And thanks a lot, Nathalia. That was a great
Yeah, thanks a
conversation.
lot.
It was great.
That was fantastic.
And unfortunately, with the situation in Brazil, I don't see it getting much better in the near future. So hopefully we can have you back to talk about all of the fascist madness going on. I'm Ben Norton with my co-host Max Blumenthal. As always, thanks for listening.